Hey, baby. Alright, as promised, I'm going to do a Trifusion series of Launch, Android 18, and Zangya from the Dragon Ball series. Series is Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and whatever the fuck. Movie. But not GT, we don't do GT, or apparently Super either. Especially not Super, since Launch apparently is not allowed anywhere near Z and anywhere near Super these days. But anyways, I digress. I'll have plenty to say about that later. Alright, let's get started though. First things first, behold images. I'll be using reference images. If you don't know what a Trifusion is, I'll go ahead and explain it real fast. I take 3 characters, I take 2 of them, fuse them together into a new character, and then I do that 3 times, and then I take those 3 and then fuse all of them into a final character. Ta-da! Aren't I magnificent? But that's something that I do. I kind of started that. I started that sin on the internet, if you're wondering. This is Enya. She is from movie number whatever. I don't care. It's like some weird number. 8, 7, 59. But she's from one of the terrible movies. And she's basically just a reskinned Android 18, basically. But she is very elegant. I like her color scheme. She's pretty. And Android 18, of course, probably the most infamous of the 3. People really like to obsess over her, usually whenever she is polled. Whenever it's polled, you know, who's your favorite female character from the series? Usually it's Android 18. And she has the distinction of actually being probably the most powerful female character in the show. Other than like Whis' sister, I guess, if you want to be really technical about it or something like that. But people really like Android 18. I kind of like her too, but she's never been like my top tier or anything like that. You can probably tell which one of these I actually prefer more than the other ones. Yeah, this is turning into one of those do-it-for-her images, isn't it? But I really like Blonde Launch specifically, and this will be a fusion of Blonde Launch specifically. I don't really care about the blue-haired one. That's kind of just a stereotypical Japanese living trope of a Shrine Maiden personality type. I don't like those. She just kind of exists. Blonde Launch, on the other hand, I'll have a lot to say about her characterization throughout the series. But, you know, as far as design goes, we'll be using the blonde design. She has a lot more personality, and you can see how she kind of parallels the other two. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Alright, so for the first video, I think that I will try to fuse Launch and Zangya. I didn't make my mind about that until just now. And I don't know why I made that decision, but I'm making it. So that's what we're going to roll with. Okay, so I'm going to save all my... I have a myriad amounts of complaints about Dragon Ball and the characterization of women in Dragon Ball and Launch specifically, especially. Although 18 did pretty... But I'll save all that for later in post-commentary. But for now, I want to try to burst through this. I took off my pants before I started doing this. It's actually because it's really hot, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to take off my pants because it's getting hot, baby. It's something like that. But, you know, just... Wait, why am I telling you this? Oh, because I want to hurry up and get through this so that I can actually just draw this on Picarto with the fan on. That way I don't have to worry about my mic. That's why I said that. Yes, that's why. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take these characters and slam them together in a completely non-sexual but somewhat sexual fusion. First things first, we need to find ourselves a good pose. Actually, let me turn that off real fast. Now, as I always mention, whenever you're doing a Trifusion like this, you can't just, you know, fuse their faces together and call it a day, but I do the whole shebang, which means fusing together all their clothing and everything, so we need a full body shot. Can't have a 3/4 shot, can't have a half shot, can't have a bust shot. Need a complete 4 out of 4 is what we need. So, let's see. I don't think I want to cloud up the image with guns either. I hate drawing weapons. I'm going to actively avoid doing that because I want to actually enjoy this fusion series and I don't want to waste time. Well, I might do it for like the final one. I'm not gonna poop all over it just yet. But you guys get the idea. So nothing where she's holding a weapon. Or if she is holding a weapon, I'll just kind of shift that off to the side. Let's take a look at Zangya real fast. A lot of prep work for doing this sort of work is just kind of staring at the screen. and I didn't pull many reference images of her. There's not too many reference images of her because she's not as popular as the other two, and also because her reference material is much more sparse because she's only from one movie. But let's see, have her sitting down, have her standing up. I basically just pulled these two because I wanted to make sure that I had one where it was a full body shot that I could see all the details of her design, and I also wanted to have one where the physical model was shifted to the other side, because with her, she does have hair coming off to one side and one side only, like it actually parts to one side. So whenever you flip her, like Goku's hair is always like that, and whenever he turns his head, it kind of just magically becomes the same thing, except on the other side, which makes no sense. So whenever they model him in 3D, his hair always looks really weird. But with her, it's actually detailed and rendered out, so they have to have a physical model. So whenever she shifts her hair, it actually stays that way. So that's the reason why I had it from this side. Let's see. But as far as what we're going to be working with, I think I want to have a combination of these two, just because I want that. I've actually redrawn this image. This is my favorite image of her, the favorite frame of her from the original Dragon Ball, which I will talk. I will talk more about that later. But for now, design, I've got to restrain myself. Okay, so first things first. Let's start turning off some of these, because I don't want to cloud it up too much. I'll need some of them later. But for now, this is obviously transparently one that was actually drawn by Toriyama. And I'll complain more about Toriyama, I'm sure. But he infamously, in a con, I think, forgot what she even looked like. And forgot that she even existed, of course. And as is infamously known, she was kind of written off the series eventually, with the kind of shitty excuse that, oh, if she sneezes, she turns blonde. It would be too confusing with the Super Saiyans. But again, just that's for later. I need to resist. So first things first, I am going to try to draw a very loose. Hold on. Since these are already pretty similar, I'm going to sort of draw a boxed out kind of shape. You do kind of want to, if you're not used to drawing in the style, don't trace or anything, but you do want to sort of go over the proportions, because proportion, especially in Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama style, is very important. Because like their upper body is very squashed, and they always have extremely long legs, and they have these gigantic foreheads for some reason in a lot of the cases. And they're depending on who the keyframe artist or whoever the lead artist was whenever they were doing the animation, usually the face will either be very squashed or it'll be very open. You can never quite tell. But what I'm going to do is take this image and slide it up onto Toriyama's. And we're going to do a sort of mini fusion of these two designs. And it's okay to squash it down. You'll lose resolution, but we're going to be going back over it anyways. Make sure that it's at the proper size for whatever she is. Pull that down. You don't have to worry about details that much. And this arm I might do something else with later on. With hers, she's just kind of hang off to the side. Usually whenever you see shots like this, it's basically just to show off the character design. And that's the reason why they have one arm hanging down, because you're already seeing the other arm in their uniform. So there's no reason to really worry about it. But I think I do want to do something with this other one. I really need to resist the urge to try to put a gun in here. I don't want to draw a gun, but it's very easy to have her doing something to make sure that the design is not too boring. Okay, so this is not going to look quite right. Like a Toriyama, you notice, he kind of squashes, he kind of pinches his design sometimes. Especially whenever he's drawing women. It's very strange. So I'm going to have to try to resist the urge to add more meat to her bones, which I am wont to do, because I am a sick deviant. But that's okay. If you're a sick deviant and you're drawing things, and you find that being a deviant enriches your world, and you want to paint a happy bush, or not that kind of bush, but like an actual bush with squirrels in it, in a woman's pants, then go ahead and do that, because if that's what makes you happy, that's what makes you happy. Unless it's like criminal, then don't do that, or don't get caught. Alright, so we have this in Toriyama's bizarre Kingdom Hearts-esque proportions, even though it had nothing to do with Kingdom Hearts. And we will bring this up and try to ensure that everything is just so that whenever we go back over her head, because I want to use this head, then everything will be just fine. And I'm going to have to go back over this a couple times as I pop my neck to make sure that this is aligned just so. Another reason why I like to hurry up and get through with these is so that I can go back to listening to music. I was listening to, for the past few days, I've been listening to Isaac Hayes' Hung Up on My Baby over and over again, which I'm sure has been getting on my stream people's nerves. And that's because it was used as a cover in the Ghetto Boys, what's the name of the song? In Ghetto Boys, since I'm drawing, I can't really think. My mind is playing tricks on me. That's what I'm thinking of. One of the greatest rap songs of the 1990s. And the original Isaac Hayes song is extremely pretty. I love it whenever rap songs actually do that. Why am I talking about rap songs? But I love it whenever rap songs do that. Whenever they use it as their sort of main beat, as the thing that they're using as a main cover. I love it whenever they actually use something that's actually not like hard, but is like extremely elegant and pretty. And anytime, I don't even know if it samples anything, but I also really like for example, a random song that I thought of off the top of my head is a Tupac's You Can Be Touched, which I think might actually be one of his posthumous albums, off one of his posthumous albums. But that's another one where it has that sort of a smooth rhythm that I like in rap songs. Okay, anyways, back to Dragon Ball. I don't know why I started talking about rap. But whenever we're drawing out these images, like I'm sort of tracing right now, but this is also mainly because, although I kind of developed my own style very loosely off of Dragon Ball in a way, because I was watching a lot of DBZ at the time. I'm actually not very good at drawing Dragon Ball style, because it's kind of very chunky looking a lot of the times. And because so many different people have worked on it, it kind of just goes all over the place in regards to what it's supposed to look like. So I always have to try to get myself back in the swing of things, because otherwise it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like you'll notice in this is one of the things whenever you're starting up a Trifusion, you kind of have to identify how people work in a specific style. But I'll briefly show this. Like, take a look at, let's see, 4 and 1 are the ones I need on. If you take a look at all Launch's images, if you can see them through this mess, then, like, you'll notice that her hair, specifically, is probably the best example, is always drawn differently. It does have this sort of, it is sort of uniform. You can tell that it's her, but sometimes it's extremely fluid. I think this one's actually from the Princess Castle movie that I don't think ever got released overseas. Probably wrong about that, though. And this image is very fluid, and this one is more solid, but it always has these rules about it. Like in the case of her hair, it parts right here, and has an open space, but there's one strand. Like, that's always present, even whenever it's flipped. And her hair sort of has this burgeoning area right here, where the shape grows larger. So you have to maintain these rules. And it always has this one upper strand that comes out of that area. And then after that, it has a part right here. Comes back down. And at that point, then it starts... There's not too many rules. And some of them it does this, and some of them it does this. But this is kind of... You need to make sure that it constrains to right here. Because with this one, it kind of divots in, and on this one, it comes out like that. So these are sort of the rules that you need to operate by if you're drawing her hair. You kind of have to identify things like that. You just have to look at an image and tell, alright, what makes this character model this character model? What makes her her? And in the case of Launch, it's these kind of rules. So whenever I'm dealing with her hair, this is what I'm going to be looking at. That this shape, this part, this shape up here, the part in her hair right here, and this kind of extraneous area right here, where this acts as the boundary. So whenever you're identifying things, there you go. That's how I do it. Okay. I can remember what the hell. Is it 3, 1? No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's right. That's right. All right. Primary off. Layer 1 off. Okay. There we go. Back to work. But that's what I'm going to be doing. All right. So right now I can already tell there's a few things that are kind of abnormal, and I think I shouldn't have added too much detail to her face, but I kind of just wanted to get into I wanted to make sure that her basic proportions were down. Like you can tell, mainly is because of Toriyama's style not meshing with this one. Like the proportions on this one are okay, but whenever you combine it with the proportions of this one, it gets fucked up, because the head on Toriyama's designs is much larger than it probably should be. So, since we took the legs exclusively from the Toriyama image, we're going to have to shrink that down a little. And I'm probably going to have to shrink the feet too. I'll probably have to fix it in that way. But let's take a look at this real fast. And let's put this up against his original drawing. No, come on. God's sake, sigh. Let's put it up against his original drawing, so that we can actually see whether or not it's lining correctly. So, bust right here, rib cage right here. Belly button needs to go up a little bit, probably. Doesn't matter too much. Kind of crotch ends right there. Knees end kind of more or less in the right place. Sock line needs to come up probably about to right there. Minor fixes. Although we may not even be using the socks, but this is for the sake of getting used to the proportions here. And go ahead and draw clavicles there for the sake of it. So that looks like the proportions are more or less okay in regards to getting the overall Dragon Ball-esque design down. Now, I would not draw exactly this way, certainly, but we are constrained by the original design. So we'll be using this as sort of a loose base to draw over whenever we're combining it with Zangya. And with regards to Zangya, what I shall do is actually I'm going to shrink this down to give myself some more room, since it's just a primary, so it doesn't really matter what its resolving power is. Move you over here, and then I will take one of you, I guess. I think I'll use the cell rather than Toriyama's original drawing. I think I trust someone that's not Toriyama in this case. And we'll move you over here for reference, and then we'll work on top of this. Okay. And for the sake of working on top over it, change it to a slightly different color, something that we can see but it's not going to be too obstructive, which is usually going to be a light blue. If you ever wondered why giraffes are in blue on white paper, that's one of the reasons why, because it's easy to work over on top of. Whereas something like a red or something would be a bit more harsh. Okay, so now we begin the actual construction of sort of combining the two of them together, which is going to be sort of complicated. Now, I'm not going to condense her face this much, because that's kind of ridiculous. Even if I have to, I'll cheat a little bit on it. But first things first, let's start combining elements. I usually like to start with the face. So actually, hold on. I'm going to bring this over here first. Take that off. And we'll start combining the eyes. So take a look at the eyes real fast. Zangya's eyes enclosed, very much so a flattened diamond, whereas Launch's have a more Dragon Ball feel to them, where the lines are not complete, like they're open spaces, and they're much more fluid. They don't have these very modern Dragon Ball harsh, sharp lines all over the place that I detest. And as far as eyelashes go, upper eyelashes up here for Launch, And Zangia's are all down here. It'll look to be about 4 of them, I think, or 3. It's hard to tell at this resolution. So just combining the eyes, for example, we will get an in-between of these two things, which will be her eyes being a little bit sharper, and then sort of closing them off a little bit more, but not entirely. Should probably flatten them out too. So pull this up some. And she'll probably end up looking a bit more like Android 18, because that's sort of what Android 18's eyes are like as well. They're not as... they're almost exactly like her eyes, but they're not quite that exaggerated, I think. We'll do the same thing with this. Keep a couple eyelashes up here. Whoop. And then put the 4 on the bottom. Or 3 on the bottom should be enough. So we'll get that number. And the eyes should be more or less the same. I think Launch's eyes are usually drawn a little bit darker. But they will be something like that. And so those are the eyes that we're going to be working with. Nose, pretty much exactly the same. Although a little bit sharper. And a little bit more... Well, I'll fix that in a second. But the mouth is just a line. You know, it's Dragonball style. Don't have to worry about that too much. Although she does have that bottom thing going on there. But it is condensed a little bit more, so I'm going to pull it up some, but not too much. That should be a good intermediate. Her eyebrows are single lines. Hers actually have that open area to where they can be colored. And I don't know what the color of her eyebrows are going to be yet, so I'm going to do something like this, where the 4 of the eyebrow is open to where I can color it, but it closes back off into a single line. It should be a good way of resolving that problem. Make sure that's closed off. Okay, and probably more importantly, the shape of the face. Hers very, very dramatically geometric. Like ludicrously so. So, let's start with Launch's head, and instead of drawing it like this, it'll be a bit more furled out here. And we will kind of, let's see, it ends at the nose line here. And hers ends a little further down. So I'll take it about right here and pull it down to here. Now, if it looks like, well, that's just Launch. One, I'm drawing on top of Launch. So visually to you, like if I was drawing on her, you would probably say the reverse. But the other part of it is that their faces are basically the same. It's kind of a problem with Toriyama. He draws the same faces on everything. So there's not much variety. And that's one of the reasons why I was combining them in the first place. Because I knew it would be... Like, the subtleties... There's not subtleties, but the differences in the design with Toriyama's stuff is usually the huge changes in detail. Like, vast sweeping changes to their hair or their clothing or their skin color. And that's usually how he creates differences in his character designs. He doesn't have, like, minute differences in their actual model. And artists kind of sink into that problem over time. I'm looking at the lines on their ears. Artists do sort of sink into that problem sometimes. Let's see, what's his name? I can't remember the dude's name that does JoJo. But I've been going through JoJo, and I've noticed with his designs that he started out okay, and I think the series, as far as designs go, kind of hit their peak during probably part 3 or part 4. But now modern JoJo, everyone looks like the same person. Like, they all have really bad same face. It got very, very bad at some point. Launch doesn't actually have earrings. So what I'm going to do here is just shrink them down a little. But still keep them as earrings. Okay, but don't start with the hair just yet. You're just going to confuse yourself if you do that. And a neck is a neck. Don't have to worry about that too much. Do we have everything? Well, we'll complete the ear just for the hell of it over here. Add another earring for this hell of it. And there's a little bit of line. That's something I love doing in my drawings. That's part of my Toriyama influence. Or actually, it's probably one of the keyframe artists of the first seasons of DBZ. But they would always do these little kind of sketchy lines under the eyes, which I guess is supposed to show the cheek line. But for some reason, that always stuck with me. So you'll see that in a lot of my drawings. Whereas this little bitty sketchy line right there. I don't know what it is about that. I guess just because it gives it the face a little bit more depth and makes it look like it has a little bit more geometry. It's a very easy way of cheating with a very simple line. I love doing that. Okay. And next, over this, the hair is going to be the next big problem. Now remember what we said about the rules of her hair? Divot here, line here, this shape, line right here, divot, constraining area right here. Same general idea with hers. But first, yeah, this is its own layer. First, let's see. Kind of the same rule, except this time, this is more prominent. It's not quite a spike. Curls up. So it would probably be something like that. I might give a little bit more life like this. Has the same rule here, with this one little blob. But this is more exaggerated, probably. Like with launch, this kind of curves into this, whereas this one, it does, but it's way more exaggerated. So it still has this line right here, this half point. And here, probably... Hold on, I'll do this real fast. I'll create this divot, which is not going to be here. But just to show, there is a portion here, here. So we're going to have to do a little bit of cheating with that. What's the solution for this? The solution will be probably, we'll combine this little part with this part. So it comes up into a curl that solves that solution in regards to that shape. And we will need to add a small intermediate kind of blob right here to unite her hair with her hair. So we get something a bit more like that. And the rest of her hair is pretty freeform. It's drawn differently with everyone, but it does have that uniform rule that it comes out here, and that's as far as it goes. So we can probably cheat a little bit on this and shorten up her hair some. So we'll get something a bit more like that. Alright, and they kind of draw their hair the same way in regards to this, so we can get away with that pretty easily as well. Alright, so we're going to take the outline of this. We didn't do the interior of the hair. We didn't do that. But we're going to take this, put it right on top of Launch's pretty perfect little head. I would make many horrible babies with blonde Launch, and then estrange them all. Let's see. And as far as her bangs go, remember, they do have this rule, but she has a completely different kind of rule here. Or she does have a specific line. So what I'm going to do is draw that line first. You don't really see it on Launch's model. We'll keep it there. Hello, dogs boofing in the background. And I think with this strand, I will move it over some so that we can get both rules at the same time. Rules. I can't really do that. Rules. So, one bang here, that single strand, keep it open on this side. And there's really nothing on this side for her, so I'm going to have to shorten that up some. So we'll get a line that's sort of like this. And I think I want to pull this up a little to be able to get these itty-bitty little hairlines right here. Isn't she pretty? Alright. So we get something like that. There is another thing. She does have this thing where her hair is swept back. Like you see this section right here. It sweeps back from there. But with Launch, it doesn't do that. So I think a way around that might be to use this to do a sort of number like this. where it sweeps back, but it's still part of this bang. That looks okay. Yep, that looks okay, I think. I think we can get away with that. This is part of the fusion process. It gets very complicated, doesn't it? Yes, it does, Eli. Yes, it does. So we'll get something a bit more like this. So once I move all this off, and especially once I start adding color to it, it will start to look like its own thing, rather than simply being a design union between the two girls. And I think, to give it more of a Zengia look to it, I'm going to... Then I'm going to pull down all of this and kind of squash her off a little bit. Not too much, though. I don't want it to be too exaggerated. And that should help to make it look a bit more Zengia-like, since her face is so squished. Look at that. That's crazy. Look how exaggerated this is. Like, the line of her eyebrow and her mouth are, like, right here. That'd be like if you, like, put someone under a car crusher. Not that I would do such a thing to a human that didn't deserve it. And it ends up just, like, creating this itty-bitty little face. I don't... that's too far. That's way too far. She still looks okay, but that's still too far. Don't do that. Let's see. Alright. So now we have this solution. Let's move the girls apart. Restore our original primary. Take our new primary and put it on top of this one. Make sure that it aligns somewhat similarly. Similarianly. Alright, and I might keep the ribbon on it, but this is the part where we're actually going to start worrying about clothing. So as far as clothing goes, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, because I'm going to have to waste a lot of it on Picardo streams, and this is already getting too long as far as live commentary goes. But very, very quickly, we're going to have to retain certain elements from both of these. This is sort of the same thing on both girls, although she doesn't have any straps that we can see, at least. So one thing that we can do is keep the same sort of thing here. We can keep the kind of midriff if possible. And keep the extremely high belt on this one. We may not be able to get away with using both of those at the same time. I might pull that up all the way. Yeah, I think I will. I love to get both of those at the same time, but it's probably not going to work out too well. Only problem is, if we do everything from both of these... Yep, I think I just solved my own problem. Here's the problem. If we take over the high belt on this one, and we also take over the vest and everything, it's just going to end up looking like Zengia's clothes on Launch's body. And we need a straight-up fusion instead of that sort of solution. So I am going to try to use Launch's clothes as a base right there with the pants. And I think these are they're just normal-ass pants. There's no real flair to them. So here... She has a very poofy pants. Poofy pants. And she does not. So we'll do a sort of in-between. Where it comes down, but not... And kind of furls out, but not too much. Not as much as it does with her. And she has the boots and the socks going on down there. And she has nothing. Let's see. But first, let's actually take care of this one up here. Let's see. I can try to combine... No, that's probably too much. It's probably too much to... I was going to try to combine these very small straps with her vest in some way, but that's probably too much. So let's actually pull this over. She's kind of starting to look like a sexy genie. Kind of starting to look kind of Shantae-esque. We'll take the vest over. Right here. And there's not too much to combine, because she just has this little pink top and that's it. One thing I could do is somehow One thing I could do is somehow incorporate the way that these hinge with these vests in some way, but I'm not sure what it's going to be. So for the sake of this live portion, I'm not going to worry about it too much. So this primary is going to change some whenever you see the fast-forwarded continuation. But for the time being, we're just going to leave that as is. And I'm not going to draw her arm over on this side just yet, because I want to decide what to do with that later. But we do want to carry over the pretty little doodad here. Whatever the hell this is. It's not a dress, it's just sort of a thing that's hanging off of her. It's pretty, whatever that thing is. I'll give her that. And so we end up with something a bit more like this. And I think actually I probably should make her hair a little bit bigger. Not too much bigger, but a little bit bigger. I think I'm actually going to make her eyes a little bit smaller too. But that's how we're going to go about doing this as far as fusing things together. Because right now, in at least this line form, since we don't have any color or anything yet, since they're already remarkably close to one another in terms of design, then right now she's looking a little bit too much like Launch. Or Ranchi. Like, a lot of people get angry that she's not named Lunch in the English version. But that's not really how translation works in the first place. Plus, this is another discussion I should probably be doing for a post-commentary. But also, the Japanese don't pronounce it as lunch. They pronounce her name as Ranchi. So if you were being that literal, her name would be Ranchi, not Ranchi, not launch or lunch. Plus, calling her lunch just sounds fucking stupid. I think the only people that actually make that argument that she should be named Lunch are just people that are just being kind of, like, autistically, like, I'm not using that in negative context, but like autistically kind of overly concerned about minor details that don't matter. Okay. I need to take a look at her original image again. Right there. Okay. It is weird. Okay, she just has normal shoes. That's what's going on. So one thing I'll do here, then, is I'll probably keep the same sort of design. I'll keep that same look. Oh, that's why I was using a brush on this one. I'll use that same look, and I'll just have this be a pattern on the socks. So I'll have to have it sort of do some wobbling here on down to remind myself that this is here. And it'll be sort of like that. Same thing with this one. Not going to detail this right now. I just need kind of sketch reminder lines to remind me that it's going to look like that. And her shoes are so weird. They're so small. But her shoes are going to sort of transform into a little bit of a simpler design. Now the line work on her shoes here is this. And it sort of lines up with that one. So that's not too bad. So it'll look, because that's the original line on this. So it'll look a bit more like this, with a single line here. But it won't be boots. So it'll be something a bit more, needs to be a bit pointier, since that's what Zangia's clothing motif is sort of like. So it'll be sort of like this. And this will be black. Okay. So I think we have a pretty good union of things up to this point. It's not complete. Some of the proportions are a bit off, I can see already. It's going to take some time to shore up everything. One of the final things I want to do, actually, is make her hair a little bit bigger. Good old big hair. Big hair always looks fantastic, unless it's on me. I used to have a whole bunch of hair myself. It was actually a joke back in high school that I had so much hair, like it actually hurt to comb through it all, that even if I like had male pattern baldness, which I ended up getting, then I would lose just enough hair that I actually looked normal. That did not end up being the case. Boy, did like stress in college and everything else compile on top of itself and destroy my hair. Like, I still have hair. I mainly just shave it off, but still. Ooh, it got rough. Yes, sir, it did. Yep, but I used to have plenty of hair. I used to be extremely hairy. Still am. Just not the ways that you would like. Oh. Alright. So, one last thing. I'm going to have to condense her proportions on her trunk and her waist a little bit more. This belt kind of area is going to be a little bit smaller. I'm going to do a couple reminder lines here. I like calling them that, just reminder lines, where they're not really detailed. They're kind of just, it's just kind of shitty scribbles, just to remind myself, there's something here, look at it. Look at it, future me. Look at it. And then I'll look at it and be like, all right, past Eli, calm down. No, I won't. And I get into an argument with myself because I'm mentally unstable. All right. One last thing, actually. Her gloves. She does have full gloves. She does not. So what I'm going to do is give her some fingerless gloves. Some people complain about fingerless gloves. Oh, you fucking edgy fingerless gloves. What are fingerless gloves even for? Fingerless gloves are for whenever you actually want to protect the palms of your hands, but you still need your fingers free to be able to interact with objects. That's what fingerless gloves are for. So if you want to be stupid about that, there actually is a reason, and they exist for a reason. Hobos don't say, well, I'm a hobo now, better cut off my fingers. They're doing it because they pick up shit. Like, have you never thought about that more than like 2 seconds? Anyways. I'm going to do one last little thing here. I'm going to poof this out a little bit more. And kind of de-exaggerate that part. Because I think that was making her look a little too launch-like. So right now, you can't really see it now because of the color, once again. But I think we're in a pretty good spot. I can actually get rid of this original primary and just fuse this down here. Okay. So, here we are. I'm going to draw back over this with another primary here in a bit as we go into fast forward mode. But this is what we got. Looks like a pretty solid combination of the two for now. Go ahead and show this. I'll remind myself. Sometimes you need to do that to be able to remind yourself as far as what tonality is going to be. It also helps for whenever you're going back over it. And actually, kind of same thing with this. I was not reading this correctly. Visually. Some things you do want to shorthand, and other things you do want detailed at least a little bit, even in a primary form, or else you're going to go back over it later and screw a few things up. It's one of those things you kind of have to learn for yourself as far as your own personal habits as to what you do need and don't need. But there we go. Actually, looks like a pretty good combination of her. I thought it was not going to look quite as solid until I go back over it a second or third time. But it looks pretty good right now. I've still got to figure out what to do with her hand over here. Maybe nothing. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll just put like a human head in there or something. I don't know. Who can say, really? Alright. But that's it for now. Coming from me, present Eli. I hope you guys enjoy the next few videos. But for now, future Eli's going to take it away. I kind of miss doing the Ant Wars bits. I don't think I'm going to do that again, though. It's actually a lot of work. Alright, but take it away, future me. I will see you guys next video. Ta-da! It's a terrible way to end this. Okay, time to bitch. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be bitching about, but it's going to be something, because there's plenty of material for me to draw from. I guess first off, I should explain why exactly I why I chose these three characters in the first place. The most glaring reason why is because Akira Toriyama has this... He's not entirely same face, but he's got this thing where he has probably like 2 or 3 different female character kind of heads and bodies and hairs that he draws. And then he kind of just throws them together in various forms. And by the way, I slowed down the line portion of this because I decided with this one that I would speed up the color portions and the shading portions because I didn't really think they were that important. But you'll notice that the line work is actually much slower this time around because I thought it would be... Since I'm a line work guy anyways, I figured, well, if I'm going to show off anything, I'll show off this. And it takes me a while to figure out a way of dealing with her weird suspender top and Zangya's vest at the same time. But I eventually sort of figure it out. I reach a good solution. But anyways... But Toriyama, whenever he designs any characters, usually he has a head, like eyes, he does the same sort of moves in regards to certain things. Like Zangya and Launch, for example, both have the same hair, generally. I'm not sure if he actually designed Zangia or not. Even if he didn't, they were going according to his design principles, and that's what I'm talking about mainly. But they basically have the same hairstyle. Same with like Ayla from Chrono Trigger. Like I love Ayla from Chrono Trigger. That is my fetish. And but she's basically just Launch from Dragon Ball, which is fine by me because I really like Launch from Dragon Ball. But that's mainly the reason why I combined all three of these, is because when you get down to it, they're kind of, in a way, the same sort of character. If Toriyama decides that he wants a strong fighter female character that's sort of matter of fact, but also kind of sexy at the same time while also retaining her kind of powerful attributes, they're probably going to look like the same characters that he's done before. They're probably going to be this specific archetype. They all sort of end up kind of meshing together. They have slightly different color schemes. They might have slightly different hairstyles, like in the case of Android 18. But all three of these are probably what I kind of think of whenever I think of characters from Dragon Ball, modern Dragon Ball, that are kind of the same thing. I could have easily pulled something like a Violet from Dragon Ball. Remember that character? I could have used her, for example. Although she was not a huge character, so I don't think many people would really recognize her in the first place. But there's a few characters like that in other parts of Dragon Ball that I did not use, but I very easily could have. And in regards to, like, 18 and Zangia and Launch, Zangia has the least amount of character development because, one, she's a movie character, so she wasn't around that long. And two, probably because she's just so damn disposable. And in the movie, of course, she was disposed of very easily. I did like that because she was a female character. You can't have any of the hero characters. You can't kill her. No, 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 she's a female, and this is Japan, can't do that. We'll have the main villain do it, for really no real reason. They even seem to be the same race. This was weird about that movie. They all have the green skin and the orange hair, but they're just space pirates, supposedly. Like, the excuse for why they are there is extremely flimsy. But were they like family members? I don't know. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter in the context of the movie, and no one has thought about that ever aside from me just now. So it's probably not that important. But point being, Zangia, not important at all. She exists. She did a couple of sexy, cool things, and she beat the shit out of Krillin, which I can always get behind, because I love seeing Krillin just get the absolute goddamn shit kicked out of him. But otherwise, she does not have a personality. And you notice here, by the way, I'm having to correct some things with this primary because I went over the existing drawing of Launch and Zangia. But especially with that cell of Launch, it's kind of slightly tilted to one side. Like the eye is kind of elevated in the wrong way. So I had to do some corrections on the actual framework of it. A lot of it also is just because my style is a little bit too rigid sometimes. So that's probably also part of it. By the way, can you hear my squeaky chair? Well, now it wanted to stop squeaking. Whenever I don't want it to. Yeah, whatever. Anyways, I have a squeaky chair. But yeah, I had to do some minor corrections. So that's another reason why you generally do not trace exactly. This was not really a trace, but you guys get what I'm saying. I think I had to fix the top of that hair too eventually. So yeah, Zangia, she's just kind of a throwaway character. She doesn't really have any characterization. She's not really a person. But she has a design, and it seems like, let's see. Yes. All the movies are sort of based off of the era that things were being released in. So, like, for example, Tree of Might was sort of released around the time that the Kaioken was prevalent and after the Vegeta sort of segment of the show. But of course, Vegeta is not in it. The Cooler movie, the first Cooler movie, was released in a time in which Frieza was over and done with. So it was sort of set in that same time span in a way that didn't really make a lot of sense. Like the discussion on timelines and how it works in Dragon Ball, you're kind of just wasting your time. You can have fun discussing it, but it's really not that important. So they're kind of in their own timeline. But some of them do fit very cleanly. But of course, they never reference those events in the show, so they're definitely not canon. You get what I'm saying. But the movies do sort of revolve around eras that happened in the show. And the movie that she was in is sort of supposed to take place in the same general time span that the Cell games would have taken place in, or right thereafter. So, like Future Trunks is there, Gohan is able to go Super Saiyan 2, bullshit like that. So, in terms of like power scaling, she's supposed to be around that strength level, and more importantly, she looks the way that she does because primarily of Android 18. You can very clearly tell that they were trying to evoke her basic sort of imagery and personality and behavior and role in the story from the earlier Android saga with her design. So that's the reason why she looks the way that she does, because she's very clearly just, a movie tie-in reference of, hey, we're making a movie from this era, she's from that era, therefore this character is that character. So that's the reason why she looks the way that she does. Android 18 is not a replication of Launch, though. Like, they are two distinct characters. It's really not that important, I guess. But Android 18 did end up developing as her own character, more so in Super. Like, in general, like, I'll get into this. Female characters, or Akira Toriyama just does not deal with female characters particularly well. He doesn't deal with characters particularly well. I'm sure I'll have I have so many thoughts running through my head in regards to this. Oh, God. But Akira Toriyama is not a writer. Like, there's lots of people that are well-known that are not writers. Like, Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. He was not a writer. If you read his books, they are very, very dry, plotting. They don't really meander exactly, but they kind of cover too much detail of things that don't really matter from a narrative perspective. Because he wasn't a writer. Well, of course he was a writer. Now, anyone that actually knows anything about writing history and Lord of the Rings will immediately go, yeah, of course he wasn't. He was a historian. He had a great interest in mythologies and things like that, but he was not a writer. He was someone that cataloged information. That's how he wrote. Because he was not writing from a entertainment perspective. He was writing in terms of it being an outlet from his experiences during the wars, and also as a way of sort of translating the myths of Britain and Europe at large into one cohesive sort of story. And he did that pretty well. But he was not a writer. And so whenever you actually read his stuff, it is fucking boring as shit, and I can't really blame him too much, because he was not a writer. Akira Toriyama is not a writer, by any stretch of the imagination. He is a terrible writer. He is fucking horrible when it comes to actually writing and doing things like characterization, foreshadowing, establishing narrative themes, like all the most basic tenets of writing, he does very poorly. And he has admitted to this many, many times. And this is not something controversial. Like, anyone that knows anything about Dragon Ball, nod their head. Yep, that's true. That's true. So, he does this with not just female characters, but every character. He will briefly introduce characters because he has a flimsy idea in his head that they're going to do something. And then they'll have them do that thing, but once he's done with them, he doesn't know what to do with them. So he kind of either has them sort of linger around and maybe die at some point for someone, or they kind of just fade into the background and are forgotten forever. And that has happened not only to Launch here, but it has happened to lots of characters over the years. And even some sort of main ones, even. Like Tien is a great example. Tien, arguably the strongest human on the entire planet. You know, especially after Super, once Krillin has kind of given up fighting, but Tien is still going somewhere that we don't see. So he should be the strongest human, the human, on Earth of all places. But he's just not written into the show, and no one really asks, where is Tien? What's he doing? It doesn't matter, because Akira Toriyama just does not care. He cares about Goku, and he cares about having one or two characters around Goku, because you can't have it just be Goku and no one else. There has to be at least one or two other people to get beaten up long enough for Goku to show up and save the day, right? Because otherwise, how do you even write that? You just have Goku lose a fight, then lose another fight, and then suddenly he wins? No, there has to be something else, right? So that's the reason why Vegeta has a resurgence in Super. It's why Piccolo sort of tags along here and there throughout some of the series, even though he's not really doing anything. But he will, solve one or two problems. And here I take an image just because I was trying out an idea for... Like I said, you can trace things like this from time to time. But here you can even tell I'm not really tracing it. I'm just sort of going over the basic kind of structure of it. I don't even end up using this. I actually end up using a bazooka that I pull from a frame in Dragon Ball, which is so weirdly designed. I think I even get it wrong in regards to how it's supposed to be designed, but I guess I'll get to it whenever that shows up. But yeah, Toriyama does not know how to write characters. He does not understand how do you make an arc for a character? Do they learn something? Do they not learn something? And it does happen here and there, but it mainly happens in the very beginning of Dragon Ball Z. And something I'd like to explain. There's a lot of background stuff that goes on in regards to Z and Akira Toriyama and his editors that a lot of people, especially in America, would not know. Like a lot of people, for example, always want to say, well, the series was supposed to end at the end of Dragon Ball, or the series was supposed to end at the Frieza saga. The series was supposed to end at the Cell saga. And none of those things are actually true, because the deal with Toriyama is that he has always wanted to end the series from day one. Because the thing about Toriyama is that he is a joke comic writer, manga writer. That's what he does. He writes joke comics, and that's it. He likes it whenever a character falls down in the poopy, and then they fart. But also, they're super strong, so they lift a car over their head, and everyone gets bug-eyed and goes, whoa, they're super strong, whoa! And that's the joke. That's the sort of thing that he does. That's what he is as a writer. So he wanted to just do one thing at Dragon Ball. Like the first, whatever it is, chapter? It's not a chapter, I forget what they call them. Accumulation of chapters, whatever it's called. But he wanted to do that first arc, that first saga of Goku. And then after that, he would be done with it. That was his original plan. But of course, that changed about halfway through. Like he noticed that he was developing a pretty good, sizable following. And he ended up moving past that. And the same deal happened throughout a lot of Dragon Ball, actually. He kind of ended up developing ideas for what the next saga was going to be after he was midway through the existing ones. And that's what happened with the Frieza stuff. Like, you'll notice a lot of the information in the Saiyan saga is completely wrong now. Like, it was retconned. Like how the planet was destroyed, where the Saiyans came from, whether they were the ones running this planet trade, the planet trade existing in the first place. A lot of that starts to change kind of midway through the Saiyan arc, because suddenly Toriyama had the idea for the Frieza stuff. And so he started trying to establish that, in a hurried fashion. And the same thing happened near the end of the Frieza arc. Like, a lot of people think that's when it was intended to end, but you could even see that he was hinting that, Goku was about to come back. And if you actually read the original manga, then you can tell that it was not supposed to end at that point, because they were like midway through the chapter or something like that. Whatever their organization is, I can't remember. So the very idea that it would have ended abruptly there doesn't make any sense. Plus, the way that it was written, you could tell from the way that the characters were talking that there was going to be more afterwards. So, in most of these cases, there was no definitive, it was supposed to end here. It's just Toriyama just kept going because he was urged to. But he always wanted to quit. He's like a Harrison Ford in pretty much any role that he has in a movie. Like Han Solo, especially. Han Solo famously, he kept trying to get him killed off in every single movie that he was in. Here's that bazooka. And he kept trying to get him killed off in every single movie that he was in. And whenever the Force Awakens kind of showed up and he was, urged to come back, one of the stipulations was, of course, please kill me. Kill me! I want to die! Because he's Harrison Ford. And Akira Toriyama is kind of the same way. He doesn't want to work. He got very, very tired of Dragon Ball. And he's been tired of Dragon Ball since he started working on it. He kind of likes, he's like any artist. He enjoys certain elements of it, but ultimately he just wants to be done. And eventually he did get his wish. But this whole idea of intended endings doesn't really make any sense. There's no real precedent for it. That's just the way that Toriyama is. That's his personality. He's a guy that wants to draw funny pictures of butts and farts, and the girl that has poo-poo on a stick and the poo-poo has a smiling face on it, that's Akira Toriyama. And he goes from one of those to the other. The whole tone of Dragon Ball Z is very unusual for anything that's made by Akira Toriyama. It's not really indicative of his work at all. And a lot of that stems because of his editors. He's had several editors over the years. I think that there are 3 mainly that are from the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z eras. The first one was, Torishima. And he was the one that worked on Dragon Ball. All the way up from, I think prior to that even, up until the tournament arc, the very last tournament arc. He worked on it, and then whenever they did Dragon Ball Z, which the reason why it was called Z is because it was supposed to be the final chapter. That's another one of those intended ending things. It was called Z because he intended it to be the bookend to the entire Dragon Ball franchise. And, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, as far as the original publication are concerned, are one manga. They were not separated at all. But the second editor, and my favorite, and probably the one that's responsible for most of the success of Dragon Ball, was Yu Kondo. And he's the one that kind of took over, and basically, it seems like he used to be a Sailor Moon writer, or he had some sort of role on it. It was really strange. But he did little girl Daljins or whatever they're called. It was very strange. But he's the one that took it over. And he's the one that basically held Akira Toriyama's hand all the way from the Saiyan saga up until the beginning of the Android saga. So if you ever wondered, why does the writing take this huge plummet about halfway through the Cell saga? That's why. Yu Kondo left, and he was replaced by a guy named Takeda? I think so. Fuyuto Takeda, that's what it was. And there are some famous stories of him leaving, and then whenever he saw the androids, like Dr. Gero in Android 20, the fat, pale one, the big fat pale clown-looking android, he called him Toriyama and asked, "You can't possibly be serious. Are these really your villains?" And he said, "Yeah, these are my villains. Don't you like them?" And of course, he said, "No, these are terrible villains. You really need to not have these be your primary antagonists." Because Akira Toriyama does not have any sense. He's just not super bright. Again, he's the guy that draws poopy with happy faces on the stick. That's his thing. So whenever it comes to actual dramatic storytelling, he does not have a clue what he's doing. And if you can't tell, Kondo has this thing where he was the one just carefully kind of reeling him in and advising him. Akira Toriyama is sort of like the George Lucas over there in terms of, he has some, really good ideas, but if you don't rein him in and have people to guide him down a path of logic, then he just goes fucking apeshit and just loses his mind. You need to have someone around him that is actually guiding him, or else he just goes crazy. So there's this famous thing where he calls him, tells him these are shit. So he releases Android 17 and 18, and the guy Kondo calls back, and I can't remember the exact story verbatim or anything, but I'm rehashing it as far as my memory serves me. And he says, I like them, but they're just shitty kids. They're annoying, shitty little brats. And that's great for a villain, but you're not going to be able to support a whole chapter. You know, you're not going to be able to support a whole arc on this. So you need to release something else. And so that's where Cell came from. And I love Imperfect Cell. The first form that you see, I love him as a villain. Like, he's so creepy and I'm perfect Cell, yeah. And he's like that. I fucking love him. He's magnificent. You magnificent bastard. And Kondo unfortunately made the mistake of calling Toriyama back and saying, I like this, but he doesn't look like a primary threat, because, you know, Japan, they always have to have their stupid, beautiful villains. And he actually asked the question, when is he going to transform? Because that had been an established thing, and for some reason he was obsessed with that idea. This is the one thing that I think Kondo should not have done. And so that's where you get Imperfect Cell. And again, he calls back later and wants to know, what is this design? Because he's looking at the big, kind of thick-lipped, no-nosed, stupid-looking design that is Imperfect Cell, the second form. And as a result, he said, okay, I will give him one last form. And that's why the second one was rushed out the door, because it was so poorly received. And that's where you get Cell from. Perfect Cell. Because Perfect Cell is a very, very safe design. He's basically just Frieza inside of a cell suit. In terms of both design and his personality. Like, his personality changed dramatically. Imperfect Cell had this extremely creepy, sinister sort of thing going on. Imperfect Cell kind of turned into a whiny, dumb baby for some reason. But then Perfect Cell is, you know, he's just Frieza again. I don't really care for Cell. Like, I think he's pretty weak as a villain overall. And that was sort of the last major interaction that Kondo had. Of course, they're still friends and whatnot, I'm sure. But the reason why the quality sort of the dip past that is because I did that part of the coloring off screen. Her hair suddenly. And this is when it's going to start rushing forward very quickly. But that's the reason why the writing started to take a dip. Like, the first part of the Cell Saga was very interesting in terms of, like, there's a mystery happening. Like, there's time travel involved. You know, Trunks showing up was amazing. And in the midst of this android shit happening, the androids are way stronger for some reason. And these aren't the ones that actually I remember. And suddenly there's new ones. In addition to that, there's also this unrelated mystery that seems to be happening at the same time. And it turns out there's another time machine, and it's actually mine, except it's from a different timeline that we don't recognize. What the hell is going on? So all that was super interesting, and then you kind of get to the midpoint, and then it just turns into garbage. Because it gets to the point where he's just chasing them from island to island, and no one's smart enough to go underwater for some reason. And it's kind of just turns into this very linear thing of fight, run away, fight again, run some more, fight again. He challenges them to the Cell games. They gather together in a tiny, kind of boring little box, and they fight, and then they fight some more, and then it's over. There's no real twist, there's no turn, there's no developments, there's no sort of thematic cohesion with anything. It kind of just happens at that point. It even, like, people, especially on the internet, because a lot of people on the internet were 12 whenever they saw Teen Gohan, even though he's like 11 or 12 whenever that happens, so he's not actually Teen Gohan. Whenever they saw that, they were the same age, so they're just, oh, Gohan, oh, he's the best character, I love Gohan so much, because they're actually, you know, living vicariously through him, which is a big problem in any sort of media. That's the reason why a lot of stuff made for young people has a young person their exact age in it. But I've never, like, Gohan's a terrible this piece of shit. I hate Gohan so much. I liked him best. I like Gohan the best whenever it was the very beginning of whenever he was introduced. And like, he was always insufferable because he's Gohan, right? But when Piccolo was training him, and he was a 5-year-old, 5 fucking years old, being forced to fight Nappa, who's like the second strongest Saiyan that's alive. You know, even whenever there were Saiyans still alive, which is another story. Oh man, I really want to complain about Saiyans. But even whenever he was, like, when Nappa was fucking strong. So, Gohan trying to fight him, you know, that's nuts. A 5-year-old trying to fight the second strongest Saiyan that's ever lived, right? But he still tries. Now, he freaks out and loses his shit and goes and cries in a corner, but he's 5. And he's still trying. So he's got that. And I think I would have liked Gohan a lot more if whenever they went to Namek, he didn't have that fucking bowl cut. That stupid fucking hairstyle. And they make him have it the whole time. All because of fucking Chi-Chi, I guess. That's another story I need to get into. In regards to characterization of females and why Chi-Chi is not quite as bad as people actually think that she is. But it comes through very poorly in America because the gist of it doesn't really come through from the original Japanese. But that's another thing. But they gave him that goddamn haircut. And it just makes him insufferable to me throughout the rest of his existence, up until he manages to grow his hair back out in the next arc. But at that point, in terms of his personality, he was trying. He wasn't freaking out anymore. He wasn't that strong. You know, he still had the bullshit Zenkai. Like, the weak part of the writing of the Frieza saga is whenever they start fighting Frieza, and they start all the Zenkai boost bullshit, where they just suddenly just start getting stronger out of nowhere. Gohan goes from a power level of 20,000 to like 5 million in the space of a couple of minutes, just because he needs to, because Toriyama. But whatever. But Gohan was insufferable to me. And whenever you get to the Cell Saga thing, they were trying, Akira Toriyama is desperately trying to play up, Gohan's gonna be the next guy. Yes, he is. And whenever they're doing this, the most egregious storytelling in all of Dragon Ball, in terms of it, like, actually trying and failing miserably. That was some off-screen. If you wonder why the colors suddenly changed there, it's because I did a lot of off-screen tweaking until I got what I wanted. Even redrew her mouth a little bit, because I thought that actually giving her that more tight, upended smile made her look a little bit more like Zangya. Because at that point I decided, she looks a little bit too much like Launch. Anyways. At the very end of the Cell Saga, everything just stops. And there's this anime thing I hate, where we need to have the emotional catharsis moment, where the hero struggles and then has a big angry release of power, and suddenly they're just fucking strong as goddamn shit. And that trope is so prevalent during that time period that Cell himself becomes aware of it. Like, Gohan, at this point, the characters even say, hey, Gohan just got kicked around, but he doesn't actually feel any weaker than he was before. He hasn't even taken any damage. Isn't that weird? And even Cell's like, actually, you're pretty strong, but I can sense there's more power inside you. I better beat up your friends so that we can have an anime moment. Oh, God, I hate that. And so, Gohan, even though he has not sustained any damage, and has not even really fought yet, just sits there in the dirt, while Cell makes Cell Juniors. Cell Juniors are fucking stupid too, because Akira Toriyama made Cell Juniors, not because it makes sense, but because he thought it would be silly, I'm sure, to have Cell just flying around chasing after everyone. I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna beat you up too. And that would have been even worse, and that's where the Cell Juniors, I'm sure, came from, because it seemed silly otherwise. So, and here I'm actually going over with a secondary layer under this. I actually kind of got this from like Shantae's official art and the Indivisible art. I can't remember what her name is. I talked about her in my Indivisible video a while back, but she also does this thing where it's sort of a a mid-tone, but it's just barely around the primary shade. I really like the look of it. It worked pretty well in this image, I'll say. But anyways, back to bitching. So they make the Cell Juniors. They fly around beating up all the Z fighters, even though like Vegeta and Trunks should both be fucking strong as shit. Like they had more time in the stupid time chamber training than Goku and Gohan did. And they knew about the whole future Super Saiyan form where you just stay inside of it the whole time. They weren't using it, but you would assume that they would have tried doing it themselves. So in theory, they should be about as strong as Goku and Gohan are, in theory. They may not be as strong as Gohan because narrative bullshit, but they shouldn't be getting kicked around by Cell Juniors. And how come he can make exact duplicates of himself that have the same fucking power level while his doesn't go down at all? That's stupid. Anyways, so they have this big dumb anime thing of him just quivering there at full power, mind you, no damage sustained at all, and he won't even like help. He's not going to try to help them at all. Like, he's not trying to help them. He's just sitting there pissing his britches because he's Gohan and he's awful. Until eventually they're like, oh no, the music is starting to swell, the music is starting to swell. He might be changing, and even Cell's like looking at him. Yes, yes, anime! Anime! And of course nothing's happening. And so Mr. Satan throws the head of an android that Gohan had never met before in his entire life, and didn't know, and knew nothing about him. And the android's like, I love birds. I love birds, Gohan. Protect my birds. And so Gohan sees the android, the head of the robot that he never knew, that actually is trying to murder his father, by the way, as far as he knows, get crushed. He's like, oh my god, I've been so wrong. I watched all my friends get the shit kicked out of them by plot devices. And now this robot has shown me the error of my ways for not being angry enough. Because he loved birds. And that's what sets him off. And they have the big anime moment where they play the Japanese song of the little chirping bird and the power being released and whatnot. And everyone, like all the kids that grew up from that moment, from being 12, now on the internet, are like, oh, that was the most amazing thing ever. Best moment in all of Dragon Ball. I fucking hate that moment. I despise. That is some of the worst writing in the history of Dragon Ball. And that sums up how bad of a writer Toriyama is. But of course everyone saw it whenever they were 12, so no one even recognizes it. But it was just like the heart of bad anime writing, where they're just moving up to this artificially created cathartic moment that doesn't make any sense, but it's just there. There's like episodes, whole like weeks of episodes of them just getting the shit kicked out of them just for this dumb anime moment where Gohan's like, no, my hair. Yeah. And then after that, after he actually gets strong enough to do something about it, he still ends up crying in a corner. Because he doesn't do his fucking job. He gets arrogant very briefly. It's like, I'm gonna toy with you, Cell. Biceps are so fucking huge. God fucking damn, I'm strong. And he doesn't do his fucking job, and Goku dies. And so he just cries. He said, I give up. I'm not really a fighter. And even in the process of this, Piccolo is telling Goku, you fucking idiot. Yes, he had the power inside of him, but he's a weak-ass bitch. Your son is a weak-ass little bitch that doesn't want to fight. He is bad at this. He has no idea what he's doing. And Goku's like, oh shit, you're actually right. I never even really thought about it, because I'm a retard that loves to fight. And I never even think about anything. And so, Gohan is sitting there crying after his dad, again, has to solve all his problems for him. Cell comes back for some reason. He just comes back because he has a cell in his head, even though Goku blew off his whole upper torso. That, whatever. Toriyama again. And, Gohan, instead of like actually doing so. He at first is like, oh good, now I get to actually kill you. But then his arm gets hurt a little bit because Vegeta loses his shit briefly. And he's like, oh, I give up. Even Vegeta knows I can't do it. I'm just gonna cry. And so the ghost of Goku has to come back and spend like the next 30 minutes going, stop trying to give up, Gohan. I really want to give up, Dad. No, stop. Just, you have plenty of power. Just shoot him. Nah, I'd rather die. Oh, Gohan is the fucking worst. I hate Gohan. Why did I even get on this? I just really wanted to talk about it because it's come up lately, so I've been wanting to bitch about it. But I guess my original point was that Toriyama's bad at storytelling. That's what it was. That's what it was. Toriyama's bad at storytelling. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. That was my point. But in regards to, like Android 18 also gets puked up just in time for Krillin to put a baby in her and put her to the real work, right? Yeah. Masako, the guy that does the DBZ abridged voice for Goku, released a video recently, actually, about how Android 18 wasn't just turned into a broodmare like all the other female characters. He's wrong, I will say. Like, I disagree with him greatly. But that was what brought this to mind lately. And the idea is that she actually made the decision to become a family person, which is fine. You know, it's fine. Like, her having a baby does not make her useless or anything. Like, you can have a Dragon Ball character get pregnant and raise a family. Or even, you know, not get pregnant and raise a family. Whatever. But, whenever she is, like later on in Super, they have to fight Frieza. And there's a choice, do we send me or do we send Krillin? They send Krillin for no reason. Android 18 even says, you know, I'm way stronger than you. And Krillin's like, nah, I'll go. You stay here with Marin. For no real reason. For no real reason. And I know the reason. It's because Krillin is the real main character. That's why. Because Krillin is the real main character and Android 18 needs to stay home where she belongs on the C tier list of characters. Because that's where she belongs, because we don't need her. She's not really part of the main cast. That's the problem. I don't have much time left in this thing. There's plenty more to bitch about, and this thing's pretty much over. But I will briefly say about Chi-Chi in regards to that, since I mentioned it. The reason why Chi-Chi doesn't really come through is because she is also supposed to be a country bumpkin, and she's also supposed to be innocent the same way that Goku is. And, she has this idea of what it means to be a stereotypical, like, family person. Like, this is how you're supposed to raise a family. This is what children are supposed to be. This is what a wife is supposed to be. And she doesn't really understand why. She just understands the sort of Japanese cliches. It's like she's trying to raise the nuclear family in America. That's the equivalent. But she doesn't really know how or why those things are important. And that's where her sort of innocence and the reason why she's paired with Goku comes from. She's a bumpkin herself. You don't really get that she's actually sort of a redneck. But she is, in terms of her writing. So whenever she's being very abrasive like that, that's why. Because she has this mentality of, this is the way it's supposed to be. I need to make sure that this happens. And that's where her sort of innocence of this thing comes in from. Like, otherwise she's an idiot. So I didn't like Chi-Chi at all at the time. I still don't like her. But, you know, I actually kind of understand her now. Like, I can understand Chi-Chi. And in the original, she was never that bad. In the original manga, she was never that bad. Most of her worst moments of her being a shrill, bitchy harpy that's like a demon in human form, that mainly comes from the anime and from them going too far with the joke of, ha ha ha, Chi-Chi's so abrasive, ha ha ha. So that's another case of bad characterization in Dragon Ball. But I don't know why I got in such a tangent on Gohan especially. I guess just because it's been on my mind lately because of various other videos that have popped up, and of course the ever-present fixation on Gohan of various people that were 12 whenever they saw the show. But anyways, I guess next time I'll actually talk about, like, there's a lot I want to talk about in regards to, like, launch specifically. Zangia I've already been over, but there's nothing to really go over with her. Android 18, I did sort of go over some, but there's, again, not a whole lot to go over with her. her character did pull through. I'll talk more about her whenever I do a video with her. But there's a lot more to talk about in regards to launch. And mainly it's going to come from an interview that he did on a television show in which he responded, Akira Toriyama, in which he responded via text about what happens to all the characters after Z. And there is something in particular that he says about launch that he didn't even, like, it was very innocent and he thought of it as being nothing. But if you stop and actually start to think about it and visualize it in your head, it's like a nightmare for her. Look what happens to her. But I will keep you enthralled about that for next time. Maybe next time I'll just do launch in 18 to get out of the way instead of Zanya in 18. Anyways, I'll save that for next time. This actually turned out pretty well. I already sort of draw in a Dragonball style, so it wasn't too hard. But she turned out pretty purty. I cheated and gave her freckles, even though neither one of these has freckles, but that's like the only sort of additional thing that I placed on the model that has nothing to do with either one of them. And I kind of just did that just because I wanted to. I thought it would look super cute on her. She does look super cute. She kind of looks like a little Southern Belle. At first, she didn't really look too much like a combination of the two. But I think I kind of resolved that problem. The issue with her design really were the colors. Trying to come up with the colors that actually seem like they fit, like her palette. Something I should have gone into more instead of talking about Gohan was how Zangia's original color palette is very heavily saturated. Bright blues, stark whites, very bright purple, very bright orange. Launches, on the other hand, are very subdued. Blonde, light skin, brown, and green at best. And that's it. So trying to combine something that's low saturation value with something that is extremely high saturation value, you can't get both of those at the same time. So my idea was I will go with pastel colors. And that's the reason why I sort of ended up with like teals and at first like pinks and stuff like that. But eventually I sort of reached this point where I can't have her be bright red, bright green, white, brown, and incorporate every single color. So I just focused on combining the blue and the green into this light blue-green. Focused on trying to bring that bright red down into something that's more uniform with the palette that I had gotten from her green skin and orange hair. Which is why it's more restricted in terms of her color palette now. And I think that worked out just fine. But you can see in the process that at first she was looking a little bit too much like Launch, and just changing something as small as her facial expression. Just barely that was just enough to kind of tip it over and make it so that it actually looked like a combination of the two. And that's all I did. I kind of brought her mouth up a little bit, brought her nose up just a little bit, and that's all I needed. That's all I needed. That goes to show that whenever you're fusing these characters, a very small stroke can make the difference between something that actually looks like a fusion and something that just looks like someone with a palette swap. Very easy to kind of fuck up. But anyways, until next time, guys. I think next time I'll probably do 18 and launch together. That's gonna be a bombshell, I imagine, assuming to actually draw it correctly, right? All right, so I'll see you guys next time. You hang on to the edge of your seats in regards to that interview that I will talk about next time, unless I get sidetracked with more Gohan hatred. I love to hate on Gohan, but I'll say that for next time. So long, everyone. Goodbye.